Assuming it's going to go. Oh, there we go. Hello! I'm a little delayed, but I'm hoping that this is going to come up in the next little bit. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so welcome everybody. We have a couple of minutes before we got to get started. Sorry, there is not going to be a pre-show this week just because we had other stuff that needed to be discussed before the show. So we hope you guys understand that, but the Drak hath returned.
Well, are we going to sync our audio first?
Oh, yeah, we're going to sync the audio. Don't worry about it. We've got a couple of minutes.
Okay, wasn't totally sure if you were going to remember that. I know you've been off a few weeks.
The one thing I need to clarify with you guys. Okay, so it was Diaper Hill, Bottle Valley, and then what was the third one that you guys made up?
Medication Mountain.
Medication Mountain. Okay, so there you go. So at the very least, I can be prepared for that. Let me just make sure that this is all working. Test. Okay, I am good if you guys are good.
All right, sounds speed.
All right, so guys, we're going to hop right into the podcast. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Sorry, guys, no pre-show tonight as we are kind of strapped for time as is. And yep, we just want to get into the podcast fun because I've been missing for a while. So here we go. Welcome, everybody, to another awesome episode of Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in Geek for Friday night, October 12th, 2018. I am your returning host, Adam Mickelson, a.k.a. Drak. I hope everybody's had an awesome week and couple of weeks, probably even months so far, since I've actually been able to be here. And by the way, before I introduce my panel of fellow geeks and fellow awesome guys, I just want to take a minute and give you guys a personal thank you to all the people who reached out, to all of the well-wishers, to all of the compliments on the cute baby and all that fun stuff. Me and my wife really did appreciate it. And during a lot of those rough sessions where we had to be up at 3 a.m. and you didn't, we needed a little bit of inspiration to be able to get through those hard times. And that was actually really helpful to be able to do it. So we wanted to personally say thank you. But once again, I am being joined by my usual panel of fellow geeks, fellow YouTubers, fellow awesome guys in general, fellow guys who actually covered for this podcast while I was away. And special thanks to them for doing that. And also, if you guys aren't following them because of their awesome efforts, you should be, damn it. And we're going to start things off with the Shadow Blazer himself, who is being surrounded by his Princess Principal pictures that people gave me crap about that I don't know what it is. Alex, how are you, Mr. Princess Principal?
Calm down there, Drak. Calm down there. Goodness.
I've got a lot of excess energy to get out here, people.
Oh my.
How you doing, Alex?
Besides the very long, tiring week I've had, I guess I'm all right.
You're kind of getting to that point.
Yeah. Well, for about a day now, I'm feeling perfectly great today, but like yesterday, no sleep because I just had one of those nights, those nights we all have where for whatever reason we just can't get to sleep. So no sleep, and it felt, I guess it might just be whatever, false alarm, but it felt like I could have a cold coming on, but I don't. I feel fine today. Feel perfectly good.
I'm just going to go ahead and warn you in advance, start taking care of yourself because you have had contact with at least two girls in my house that have had colds in the last couple of days. So,
and I've been around my coworker and she's been on and off sick every so often with, I don't know what her deal is, but she always seems to have issues with her tonsils. So yeah. Believe me, the illness spread is real. Which reminds me, I still need to get a flu shot.
I was going to do that, but as you guys pointed out, I was too busy on Medication Mountain to be able to do that last week. By the way, we'll get into that in a second. But also being joined on the panel is Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, of From the Shelf, Rhapsody in Cinema, the upcoming Monster Clash for 2018. Stephen Romney, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. Much like Alex, I've been losing a fair bit of sleep this week, but unfortunately, this is more due to something I subjected myself to because I'm some sort of masochist, as I'm busy at work trying to get Monster Clash done on time this year.
Yes.
And after a few setbacks, It's been a bit of a stressful week, to say the least. The last night, most especially. But other than that, can't really complain.
Yeah, so for some reason, one of your listeners actually reached out to me, I want to say about 2 weeks after my newest daughter was born, and wanted to ask me what the deal was with Monster Clash. And I completely forgot to tell you about that. I'm like, I don't feel comfortable spoiling. I know what it is, but I don't feel comfortable spoiling it.
Yes, and I will be making an update video addressing what's been going on. I just wanted to wait until we took care of a little announcement on this show first. And once we've addressed that on this show, then I'll make the update video explaining my side of the story.
Yeah, so, and once again, I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drak. As people might have noticed, ever since early August, I have been missing, and a lot of people, even though I made videos on this, still were wondering, did he get kicked off the podcast? Did he leave his own podcast? Did he retire? No, I didn't have her, but my wife had our second daughter. And so that's why I've been missing for the most part. I've been doing 3 a.m. wake-up calls, or as the panel like to put it, I was fighting battles on Diaper Hill, Bottle Valley, and Medication Mountain. So that's the way that goes. But now I'm back. I'm ready to go. And just in time, too, because, well, the funniest thing is, the second that I leave for my break, at least once a week, big story that hit. And I would hear from everybody like, are you going to be on the podcast this time? Because you need to cover this story. You need to give your opinion on it. And no, I wasn't there. So for you guys, we have a special treat that's going to be happening in the second hour. What we're going to be doing for this first hour is basically mixing both entertainment and technology portions for the night. And let's just go ahead and get started with the news of the week, starting with a story that I have to do a little bit of apologizing for. I tried to keep my fellow panelists, while they were running the podcast, as up to date with you guys' request as much as I could. But the guy whose story we are about to cover, he literally got me the week my daughter was born. And then from there on in, he just continued to consistently slip through the cracks. And so first of all, I apologize for that. I'm usually very good with this stuff, but you caught me in a really awkward situation, one that just kept getting even more complicated as things went on. And so we're here tonight, and this is going to be the top story of the evening, as it's a story that's been going on throughout most of this year, but we have had recent updates. To bring people up to speed, we are going to be talking about Tyler Blevins, aka Ninja on Twitch. Now, for the listener in particular, he is a fan of Tyler Blevins, and so one of the reasons that he wanted to cover this was he wanted to see what our take was on the situation that followed Ninja around. That specific situation being way back earlier this year, Tyler Ninja, I'm just going to go ahead and go with Ninja from here on in, because that's how he goes on Twitch. But Ninja was put into an interview where I can't even remember how he got asked this. Yeah, it was with Polygon. Somehow he got asked like if there were any particular streamers he would like to game with, and he actually came out and said that he was not really interested in doing any kind of streams with female streamers. Specifically, his quote is, "If I have one conversation with one female streamer where we're playing with one another, and even if there's a hint of flirting, that is going to be taken and going to be put on every single video and be clickbait forever." And the reason that he's saying that is because, unfortunately, especially in the career that we all ended up in, it's kind of a walking gossip mill. So if he did stuff with a female streamer and they got a little bit flirty in there, well, Tyler Blevins is married. And so at that point, his wife would get harassed and basically hinted at that he was cheating on her via Twitch, which is really hard to do, in my opinion, because, you know, when you normally want to cheat, you do it in the cover of darkness. And he would be doing it out in plain sight, in public, on Twitch, in his own house, where his wife could hear him. But okay, fine. So he decided to take the high road here and say, I'm just not going to even take the risk. I'm not even going to let the gossip mill start up there. And I'm going to keep my wife from all of this controversy that could possibly happen if we actually had that happen. Well, The internet didn't take kindly to that, specifically internet feminists. Basically outright calling him a full-on misogynist because he refused to play with female streamers, or he refused to play with women in general. Okay? And I want to say that this process went on for about 2 months. Thankfully, it didn't affect Ninja's numbers, as he's actually one of the best streamers on Twitch. I think he's got a whopping 43,000 actual subscribers on Twitch, and I think consistently gets about 1,000 to 10,000 on any of his streams. So that's actually a really good track record for a Twitch streamer. But before we go any further, I just want to go into this particular situation since the listener wanted opinions on it. How Tyler approached this, where he's basically saying, I'm not going to stream with female streamers specifically because if I even show like a hint of flirtiness, this is going to bite me in the ass, so to speak. I mean, I'm the married guy here, so I can give my experience on it, but here are two bachelors. How do you guys view the situation? Is he in the right for it? Is he thinking too hard about it? What's your take?
Honestly, I'm sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Okay, yeah. I remember hearing the story like a month or two ago when he said about this. I don't follow him. I don't know his channel really, his Twitch streams, I should say. So, but I do kind of think I think he is overthinking this. I understand where he's coming from. He wants to make sure his relationship is kind of protected. He doesn't want, the gossip coming around, especially to the people in his life that aren't involved in what he does. This is right. We all do that. We all want to we know we put ourselves out there, so we expect the shit that comes our ways, but we certainly don't want to see that fall onto people that aren't a part of us, don't have anything to do with our public personas. But still, and I don't know why he had to put it like this. I think if he put it that way, maybe people be a bit more understanding. But when he put it as I don't want to stream with female gamers because it's going to cause unnecessary drama and it's going to cause unnecessary rumors and gossip and clickbaity news. When he put it like that, it turned into, that's when it kind of became come on, dude, just grow up a little bit, okay? Because for everybody else in the world, we all go to jobs, and unless you work in a predominantly single-sex profession, like, say, oil drilling or whatever, generally you're going to have...
Game development.
Or game development, but for the most part, you're going to have female coworkers, and and people are married, and people go to these jobs where they work with people of the opposite sex, and it doesn't always lead to affairs, adultery, or rumors. And I get it, most of the time those people aren't in the public eye, but still, that's the way you got to see it, and that's the way you got to put it to people, right? You can't be afraid that people are going to want to drag your name through the mud like that. Think about it. Our actors and all that, musicians, they go through that all the time. Tabloids splash, is this person with this person,
Well, the one difference you can make on that one is that, Ninja probably doesn't have paparazzi following him around.
Yeah, probably not. So in that case, that's we all like to, think that everybody in Hollywood gets divorced every 5 minutes, but there are cases where actors and whatever insert celebrity here have long-lasting relationships and are still married to their significant others, right? And actors still go to work with other actors, and they might act in movies where they have to kiss people that are not their spouses for a scene or whatever, or have to fake sex scenes or whatever. That's the way I think Ninja should have thought about this. I don't think he needed to be so concerned about, oh no, if I stream with a female gamer, then everybody's going to think I'm, in this relationship, and it's going to cause all this chaos and drama. It's you gotta understand, everybody in the world has to work with people of the opposite sex. It's a fact of life. There's no getting around it. You don't need to be so concerned. Don't let the gossipers get to you.
Okay. Stephen Romney. So you got interrupted by Alex, but go ahead and then I'll give mine.
Well, yeah, to kind of play devil's advocate, I do kind of understand where he's coming from because he is someone who is in the public eye.
Mm-hmm.
And another aspect is he's probably also taking his wife's feelings into consideration here with the whole notion of, okay, well, if I have a female streamer and things get remotely friendly, people may misconstrue that as being flirty. And yeah, the internet is one giant rumor mill that really doesn't know when to stop, even when it's long past the point that it should have already. And so in this day and age where you have to be especially careful because one wrong move, like as we'll talk about later, like with people getting fired over tweets and people getting fired over comments they've made years ago, I don't really fault him for erring on the side of caution here.
Yeah. Well, and we're also talking about living in an era where one slight action in the workplace can almost pretty much destroy your life at this point.
I mean, to look at like recent history, look at the crap that's been going on in the wake of the Conor McGregor and I don't know the other guy's
Khabib.
name. But,
I don't know the first name.
Yeah,
but,
between Conor McGregor and Khabib, long last name I can't pronounce. But when you look at the crap that's been going on in the wake of that, and that was with something that had been boiling over time, it's a case of we're in the age of the 24-hour news cycle. So I don't blame him for being cautious, and at least he's phrasing it in a respectful way of, hey, I don't really feel comfortable doing any streams with female gamers other than my wife because of these reasons. I mean, at the very least, he's being upfront about it. He's not being sneaky about it. He's like, hey, here's my stance. Here's the way I feel. I don't want to take the risk, so I'm going to kind of back off here. And yeah, it may seem a bit overly cautious, but I understand where he's coming from. The internet can be pretty vicious and can turn on people at the drop of a hat. I mean, it's something that other YouTubers, even people who don't stream on Twitch, have had to deal with. Most notably, Thomas Ridgewell is the most immediate example that comes to my mind because he and Markiplier actually did a video a while back discussing whether or not you let your YouTube audience know when you're in a relationship and how things are going. Yeah. And he talked about how when he broke up with a prior girlfriend, how people assumed that she was the one who dumped him and basically were giving her flack. And so it's kind of a case of, I can see where he's coming from. I can see him, one, not wanting to put his wife through the possible stress of people spreading these rumors and seeing these articles, which can be very distressing. And I can understand not wanting to run the risk of dealing with any potential PR nightmares. Yeah. And so at this point, I don't really fault him. Yeah, it may be overly cautious, but in this day and age where one wrong word can tank your entire career and livelihood, you kind of have to be careful in this day and age.
You really do. And that's kind of where I'm actually sitting with it, is that, you know, I hate to be the other disagreeer to Alex's argument. Yes, there are some things that you have to accept. And the other thing that I would actually say, Alex, that you also have to accept in this is that it doesn't matter how you put things. The internet is going to take what they want out of that, and they're going to purport their arguments to support that. And so at that point, like, from my perspective, I am married. And my wife actually does a lot of stuff with not only my channel, but also the channel that me and Alex do, Drak and Shadow. She does a lot of stuff there, so people can have access to her and be able to ask those questions and have an actual interaction with her. To an extent. We're pre-recording it, so it's not like it's live streamed. But at that point, there has always been like that little bit of a concern in the back of my head is like, if I bring in female YouTubers like I did with Shay Tari, or I actually did a podcast with Lita Kino of the Said She Any Girls podcast, that something would get construed that way. And there's no way that I can really change it. That's kind of how I went to my decision with it, is that if that happens, I can't necessarily stop it aside from through my actions saying, no, there's not really anything going on. And here's how you know it is, because my wife's right here. And if crap was going on, she'd probably smack me upside the head, kind of thing. That's probably the best way to be able to take it on. But I can understand his argument on the matter. Is, I mean, we're talking earlier this year, Henry Cavill admitting he will not date. Why? Because all it takes is one incident, one thing happening, and the girl will immediately accuse him of whatever that she can possibly accuse him of, and life is instantly destroyed. Because the bottom line is that in a lot of cases these days, it's almost like everyday society is kind of leaning towards the YouTube barometer of everybody is guilty until proven innocent. The only problem is, if you're proven guilty, your life's pretty much destroyed. And so I can understand why a lot of people have taken the stances that they have this year of like, we're just avoiding it entirely because there's no way we could possibly fight this if it actually went out. There's no way we'd be believed. Henry Cavill already had enough hatred behind him because of a failed performance as Superman that it wouldn't have mattered. He still would have had the diehard negative Superman fans immediately calling him a hardcore rapist. Okay. So in a lot of those cases, you can't really avoid it. But I will at least respect the guy, and this is the decision that he had to do. I've had plenty of friends that have had to basically say, like, look, I don't even want the temptation in front of me. I don't want to have any occurrence of impropriety. So I think it's just a better idea to avoid it entirely. And if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. Like I'll applaud the fact that you have the personal foresight to say, this is what I'm capable of, and this is what I'm not, kind of thing. But unfortunately, the ninja conversation is not done yet. You'd think it would be. It actually went on for a couple of months and we completely missed it. But in literally last month, we had an awesome event happen where ESPN announced that they would be featuring Tyler Ninja Blevins as the first ever esports guy on their magazine. Okay, so that he's the first professional gamer to be featured on ESPN magazine. This is a big deal to a lot of people. Like I've gotten to this argument with a number of other people saying like, it's stupid that ESPN will not cover esports, and all of their announcers, when they get asked about it, is like, I'd rather go into a closet and hang myself than cover esports. And so the fact that he's making his way onto a magazine, that's pretty awesome. So I want to kind of get into this, and then we'll get into the final portion of this story that actually is more recent. But yeah, you guys' opinions. Like, he is the first esports gamer that is actually being covered on ESPN, of all places.
Well, ESPN lost the whole Extreme Sports Network
They did
when they started covering spelling bees. So at this point, they might as well start covering esports.
I would actually say they lost it when they did dodgeball. I think that was before the spelling bees.
Well, yeah, but at least
really?
dodgeball is a sport that requires physical exertion.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, I was talking the movie. I was like when they actually got featured in the movie.
Well, I mean,
think about it.
I haven't really seen Dodgeball, so you mean ESPN's in the movie Dodgeball?
Yes, they actually made a joke about it, and ESPN applauded it, where they talked about like all the multiple networks that, because the way that they justify covering spelling bees, Alex, is that they put them on the lesser networks that ESPN owns, and that way it doesn't matter. So the way they did it in Dodgeball is that it was on ESPN the Ocho, which is like ESPN 8. Roughly. So
right.
Like it's on the 8th ESPN. It's not on mainstream ESPN. It's over here. And that's how they kind of justified it.
Yeah, but again, like having a sports movie and not showing ESPN, and it's supposed to be set in modern day, that'd be like trying to show, I mean, a good example, that'd be like trying to show a movie about William Randolph Hearst, but without actually referencing William Randolph Hearst. And before you people comment, Citizen Kane doesn't count.
Anyway, so we interrupted Alex, but go ahead.
No, I think that was what I was going to probably say. Is like it makes sense, Dodgeball being a movie about sports and comedy, and it also being a comedy. It makes sense for ESPN to be there. So
I'm just shocked because, again, we had all of those sportscasters that officially worked for ESPN that would come out and say, I would rather die before I cover esports. And people actually did reach out to me because they know that way back when in the Radio SLCT days, I did a fellow podcast with a colleague of ours, David Vito Weekworth, called Sports at Home, where he actually covered the esports idiot that actually, or the ESPN idiot that said that. And so they got to be subjected to me in about a 10-15 minute rant on how this guy's an asshole. And if he doesn't want to do the job, then I would gladly take his money. Kind of thing. So like that's the way that I kind of saw on it. Romney, what's your take on Ninja making being the first ever gamer on ESPN magazine?
Well, it's honestly an important step. I think it's because the society at large is starting to realize that esports is a money-making force. Yeah. And if you don't jump on the curve, you're naturally going to get left behind. That's why, although I'm still against it, there's a heavy contingent pushing to have esports added as an Olympic event. I have my reasons for not wanting it, but that's for a separate episode. But for ESPN to acknowledge, and it's kind of showing, hey, they realize there's gold in their hills. It may be made of ones and zeros, but there's gold.
Yeah, and even I'm kind of there with you. Like, esports doesn't necessarily make sense at the Olympics, especially when there are so many other events that cover esports that are going to be seen as better for esports coverage than the Olympics is.
Well, and I've talked about this with people about this, where it's just a logistical thing. But again, if I go on that train.
But besides, you got to look at the grander picture. I mean, how on earth are you going to make fun of the Eastern European judges that are horribly biased on everything in something like Overwatch? Not really going to work.
Well, I mean, you probably would substitute them with South Koreans, to be honest.
Probably. And that's exactly how they would go. So the final portion of the story is this happened. And this was awesome for Ninja. And I'm not even a fan of Ninja, and I applauded him for being able to hit this, because this is something I've been waiting to see in my lifetime, and it's now happened. And that's awesome. Unfortunately, the event was then ruined by our friendly neighborhood record scratch, Anita Sarkeesian, as she then commented on the announcement tweet, wait. I'm sorry, I need to go a little bit more.
Wait. Isn't this the guy who said he won't play with women? Cool way to go, ESPN, if elevating the status of misogynists.
That sounds like a record scratch, right?
Might as well.
I'm gonna make sure my ears aren't bleeding.
Exactly.
Okay, there's no blood.
So yeah, and then also we got another one. I'm not going to do the full-on voice of it, but it's just refusing to play games with women because you are married and don't want hypothetical rumors to start is the most bonkers logic I've ever heard. What is wrong with all of you? Okay, so here's the thing. Like, Alex does have a leg to step on in this argument. Okay, is he overthinking it? Yeah, probably. But at the same time, the internet overthinks everything twice as much. So at that point, I can get the argument there, but then you have the internet already going to make the rumors whether you did anything or not. And so Anita's argument, while somewhat logical, it also flounders in a lot of cases, because what happens if, let's just say for the sake of argument, they're having a really great time. It's not necessarily getting flirty, but Ninja, a lot of the games that he plays are like PUBG, Fortnite. I know Fortnite's going to get covered again tonight, guys. Sorry about that. PUBG, Fortnite, Overwatch, stuff like that. Highly competitive games. What happens if he accidentally lets slip something like, I don't know, like PewDiePie and the N-word? Okay. What if that happens? You can instantly have an entire army of internet feminists and male feminists against you. And all you did was say a word. And it won't even matter if you apologize for it or go to great lengths to make up for it. You're damned. That's the way the internet community is actually going to look at that. Case in point, all he ever did was say, I just don't feel comfortable doing this. And he got Anita Sarkeesian on his throat, literally at his jugular. So yeah, man, she is literally becoming a record scratch for all of us. It's starting to really suck. But you guys' thoughts on Anita Sarkeesian's argument against Tyler Ninja Blevins being on ESPN the magazine?
Does this woman ever come with her remote? Seriously.
Oh yeah. Honestly, the thing I saw from this, I didn't really see it as a record scratch. I just saw, oh look, someone who basically uses controversy to get famous is trying to start up controversy to get famous.
That's exactly right. And here's the thing. I'm actually going... Anita's going to do what Anita's going to do. You can't stop that. And I know that some people have actually gotten a little frustrated with us that we don't have a neutral opinion on Anita anymore. And part of that is just because we've all seen recent events with Anita. She has lost a lot of that cred with us. And that's why we don't necessarily have that anymore. But I actually am going to give a compliment to Ninja here, because from what I can tell, he didn't reply. And that's what you should have done. He literally did what we have been telling people on this podcast to do for years. Don't feed the trolls. And so he didn't comment on it, at least to my knowledge, he didn't. Let me double check in this story. Yeah, we have a response from Tim Pool, but we don't have a response from Ninja. So he didn't respond to her, and I think that's probably the best, because if he had responded, Anita would have gone into her usual behavior of, well, playing victim and then getting a bunch of college lecture dates. So that's probably for the best in how he actually interacted.
Yeah, honestly, and I think some people, I've seen articles I've seen some snippets of things covering this event. It didn't click in my brain until we covered it now, what they were referencing. But to me, this just comes across as Anita is trying to stay relevant, the same way that it's kind of like these celebrities that are like C-list, D-list, or like Z-list, that the only way they get any sort of coverage on any tabloid magazines is by doing something ridiculous and crazy. I mean, a good example is when Britney had like her big mental breakdown and she shaved her head. It kind of reminds me of that. It's a case of she's trying to use controversy in order to stay relevant. I mean, the other example is, I think her name was Ann Arbor, the one who did the Dear Fat People video. It was Nicole Arbor. Nicole Arbor, yeah. Basically, she was doing the same thing, where it's just trying to start controversy where there isn't necessarily any in order to get more attention. And here, it just comes across as kind of desperate, because he didn't say anything misogynistic. He made his point pretty clear, quite eloquently, and was mainly coming from a place of, hey, I want to take my wife's feelings into account. And so it's just a case of, I mean, the fact that she calls the logic bonkers, well, it isn't really. He actually made his logic quite clear. And if anything, she's just proven his point.
Pretty much. And in fact, I actually did like the fact that Tim Pool actually came out and responded to her, basically saying, he didn't say he didn't want his family to get harassed, though. I think he had something like, there will be thousands of videos attacking his wife. And that is accurate. I mean, for crying out loud, like, I'm not going to go over the exact event again, but I did a controversial video and my wife got attacked, and my wife wasn't even in the damn video. My wife it wasn't even 10 steps near that video. And all of a sudden she got that crap. Okay. So that crap is going to happen. Bottom line, you can't necessarily control it, because it is the nature of the internet. If you don't do it, somebody on 4chan, somebody on Reddit is going to beat you to the punch. Kind of thing. That's just, unfortunately, that's the way society goes right now. I'm thoroughly convinced that as soon as we bring back the whole Alex is the hipster of the podcast, we will then eventually have the entire hipster movement moving behind Alex. Even though we're joking about it, they don't know that.
Yeah, problem is rallying behind causes is too mainstream.
This is in fact true. He would not be cooler than the other kids at the table. So there you go. But yeah, this is pretty much covering the whole Ninja situation. And it's just an unfortunate one, because I could see his argument as far as it goes. I think Alex has some merit too. But the bottom line is that you can't necessarily control the nature of other individuals, especially when it's funny. Like I keep on making the wrestling comparisons, but I think everybody in this situation has taken a page from Eric Bischoff's book, Controversy Creates Cash, because that's literally what's happening here. Anita is bringing in controversy to create some cash for herself. Ninja's like the only one I think here that isn't, because he's just trying to be honest about it. But then you look at the interviewer of Polygon who put it up, and it just gets worse and worse from there.
Welcome
Everybody
to the
wanted some cash in this.
Welcome to the evolution of yellow journalism in the 21st century. William Randolph Hearst would be proud.
And yes, indeed. So let's go ahead and move on into the next story, because now we need to actually get into stuff that is from this week. And unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot this week. There were a few controversies, but we had a couple of stories to work with. And I actually just want, I know that I have the agenda set up the way that I do, guys, but I'm just going to go ahead and get this story out of the way, because there isn't a whole lot to it. And frankly, you guys did it last time. All right. You guys did. And in my opinion, you guys did a fairly good job, considering that, like when I looked at what you guys were saying, there really wasn't much I could add on to it. And obviously we'll have to go into a little bit of it, but let's go ahead and do Telltale. So this is another story that people reached out to me specifically, and thankfully you guys covered on the podcast. And you did as much as you could, but you had one night where you had one story, and then all of a sudden, while you guys are recording, the rumor mill just went. And by literally morning the next day, it was confirmed. So the whole Telltale situation, if you are living under a rock and you didn't actually follow the coverage for it, Telltale Games, a company popular for making point-and-click adventure games this day and age, has since shut down. And it's shut down under a myriad of questionable circumstances. One of which being horrible management. One of which being horrible use of their branding deals. Specifically, trying to make promises that they couldn't possibly keep. Also, from the development end, mismanagement and the fact that their engine literally went 5 years without getting a serious, I'm talking a serious overhaul update. Before people jump down my throat, yes, the Telltale engine did get updates. Not an overhaul, though. No, never did. And that was kind of the problem that they eventually walked themselves into. The other problem also with the mismanagement that I don't think you guys covered, and I'm just going to go ahead and bring it up because it is a good point. Telltale started as kind of an indie company. And they never really got past the mindset of being an indie company, even though they were landing deals with Netflix, with to be able to do stuff with Stranger Things. They landed the Walking Dead deal. They landed Wolf Among Us. They landed Batman. They landed Guardians of the freaking Galaxy, and they still approach things as if they were an indie studio. That's not good. They were not an indie studio by that point. They were actually pretty mainstream. And so that already played into it. But one of the situations that people have been following with it, going back to The Walking Dead, is that they were in the middle of launching their final season of Telltale's The Walking Dead. Thankfully, you got 2 episodes, but then they announced that they were going to be shutting the doors. And the skeleton crew that they were going to be putting in place wasn't necessarily to finish The Walking Dead. It was to honor prior commitments, which didn't necessarily get covered on the podcast. It was through Netflix. I'm not sure what it was supposed to be for. It was supposed to be the
Minecraft story mode for Netflix.
Okay, so we know it confirmed it's Minecraft story mode.
Mm-hmm.
Because I kept on hearing like it was either Minecraft or it was Stranger Things, one of the two. And
no, it was Minecraft because Stranger Things was one of the first things on the chopping block.
Yeah, so they were honoring that commitment, but while they were skeleton crewing it and getting it all done, there was a lot of backdoor deals being done to at least see if they could finish out the final season of The Walking Dead, which landed them in hot water, mind you, because they got a class action lawsuit on their ass for doing that. But thankfully, they did find a buyer. And the buyer is strangely expected, but yet unexpected, as it is going to be the actual creator of the Walking Dead TV series. So, what's the studio's name? Skybound. So Robert Kirkman's Skybound studio is going to be paying for the additional, I think it's 2 more episodes of the Walking Dead final season to be done. And they're basically being handed the assets to be able to do it. So this is a question I think you guys had from the last podcast, is like, did they have the engine to be able to give them and everything like that? They did. They are looking to be able to do that. Sad reality is, though, that a lot of the main developers for The Walking Dead, they had to lay off. So in this case, some of those guys, thankfully, because the gaming community came together, have found jobs. So it's not like you can bring them back to finish out The Walking Dead final season, but they're hoping that they can bring back enough people to be able to finish it and be done, roughly. And there's some skepticism as to whether or not they'll be able to do that, because, again, a lot of their prime developers for The Walking Dead have since gotten employment elsewhere. But also others are hoping just to be able to finish Telltale's The Walking Dead and be able to have the resolution that they want for the characters within that. So let's go ahead and go into that and you guys' opinions. What is you guys' opinions on Robert Kirkman and his studio Skybound saving Telltale's The Walking Dead final season?
Honestly, it doesn't really surprise me. It actually makes sense from a business standpoint that,
yes,
given, I mean, it even says in Robert Kirkman's own words, he basically said, like, we can't afford to lose both Andrew Lincoln and Clementine within the same year. For those of you who don't know, Andrew Lincoln is the actor who plays Rick Grimes on the TV show, who is actually bowing out from the character this year. Yeah. And so I can see where he's coming from because The Walking Dead is still a strong brand, despite some of the people kind of arguing that the show itself has made some missteps. But it's still a very strong brand, so it makes fiscal sense for Robert Kirkman to kind of step in saying, okay, I'm not going to let you drag my creation through the mud because of your mismanagement. We'll kind of take over from here so we can at least end this story on a high note, so that way we can protect the brand.
Well, and on top of that, this isn't entirely negative. A lot of people have approached this from the end like this is completely negative for Robert Kirkman because he takes all the bad press on himself and everything like that. It's not entirely negative, guys. Technically, Telltale held the rights to Telltale's The Walking Dead. Now he holds the rights. He has everything Walking Dead at this point. From what I understand, like Telltale's deal with him, he had minor influence before this point. Now he has 100% influence, kind of thing. He can shape this however he wants to. And I mean, if he wants to find another studio to continue it, which I don't think he will, because it would be a pretty arduous process, he could. Because he owns Telltale's The Walking Dead now, so that's well within his purview to actually finish it, and for the exact reasons that you kind of pointed out, Romney. You already had. I know one person left, but I think somebody else also died on The Walking Dead set, and so or he was a cast member of The Walking Dead, and so at that point they don't want to have additional losses to what people consider to be a great series.
Yeah, and so looking at it, it's a case of it makes sense that Kirkman would step in, like from a business standpoint, and just from a standpoint of this is the world he created, so of course he wouldn't want to see a part of it literally die off, if he could help it. So it's basically like it makes sense. It doesn't actually surprise me all that much, given that people were asking him about it at New York Comic Con, and so I mean. If for people who are fans, that's probably the best news ever because you basically have it under the protection of the original creator. And it shows that at the very least, they care enough to at least bring the story to a conclusion that isn't just going to drop off. Mm-hmm. But I can't really comment beyond that since I'm not particularly a fan, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I'm a Telltale fan, but I think I've gotten requests over the years to do Telltale's The Walking Dead, specifically with my wife, but I have not been all that invested because I don't watch the series and I don't care about the spinoff and all that. So I don't know. And even now, like now that I know that the series is done and Telltale's done, I'm not all that motivated to go and pick up The Walking Dead after all of this. Alex, what's your take on the situation? Was it a good idea for Telltale to give the right or for Robert Kirkman to buy the rights to Telltale's The Walking Dead and then finish it?
I'm not sure it is. I mean, I get the whole business idea, the business angle. The Walking Dead is popular. Granted, I know its ratings have been slipping, but there could be other factors for that. But
yeah,
just, unless this game I know there's a lot of people who are wanting it, but I can't help but feeling like it's the concept of you don't know what you got till it's gone, and that's why people are kind of mourning the loss all of a sudden, even though clearly it wasn't selling well enough to completely sustain Telltale. But there's a lot of
the other thing you have to consider is like there have been significant hiatuses between the seasons of The Walking Dead, so you could technically make the argument that they've lost this series again and again and again and again.
Yeah, I mean, considering this is the last season that you're trying to salvage from a company that completely went under, couldn't even finish it on with its skeleton crew, meaning there was still a lot of work to be done. I'm not sure there's how much that you're going to be able to salvage out of this, even if you can get your hands on some of the original assets, and it sounds like they can.
Well, yeah,
you still have your team scattered to the winds. You still have other problems with having to finish what was again built by people who probably know this engine and the mechanics behind of what they were building a lot better than whoever you're going to assemble. It's just, and if this game completely pitters on arrival and is just no good, well, everyone's just gonna have a big "I told you so."
Yeah, though I know at the very least, episode 3 was being submitted for a ratings review by the time
the
closure went in. So it's not like they're flying completely blind, we know at the very least episode 3 was in a state where it just needed to be debugged, and it was more or less ready to go after it received a rating.
So at that point, all they need to do, because from what I understand, this was only supposed to be like a 4-episode season, unlike Telltale's usual motif where it's going to be 5. This was only going to be 4. So at that point, they only have episode 4 to develop. So that's not necessarily all that bad. They can finish up the details on episode 3. In fact, I feel like they probably would have anyway if they had the skeleton crew and they were able to make it work. But then it's just that final episode you wouldn't have gotten anything on. But yeah, right. And unfortunately, like as it's being brought up in our live chat, and by the way, thank you guys for coming out. It sounds like too much drama and a hassle to follow. How will this be resolved? You're already seeing it over the last couple of weeks. It's not good. Telltale has basically dug their own grave. And while I understand my compatriot Brenton Volley's viewpoint on the matter, where he got really pissed off with it and he had a bunch of trouble in the last Telltale game that he had, I am much more melancholic on the matter, because here's the thing. I love point and click adventures, and because of Telltale games, they came back into the mix. They came back into the forefront. And so at that point, I have a lot of respect for Telltale. I still think it sucks that all of this crap happened and it was so poorly managed, especially when you look at the situation, all of the drama that they had problems with, all of the financial stuff, it could have easily been avoided if they had just done steps 1 through 3 and made it work. But unfortunately, they were taking it from the approach of, we're an indie studio, not a mainstream studio, and they were far from that at this point. They were already getting deals that indie studios would not have gotten. And so that's kind of the sad reality here. So while I will miss Telltale and all of the awesome, and here's the thing, that the weekend that they announced it, I immediately went to Steam and I got as many of the games that I didn't have as possible. So at that point, that wasn't too much, but I went and got everything that I didn't have just because I didn't want to lose that stuff. I didn't want to lose Tales of Monkey Island. I didn't want to lose Sam & Max. And because of Telltale, they came back into the forefront too. And that's why this is just all the sadder. I'm not saying that Telltale was in the right. Far from it. From what I understand, they were all of their management were being just piss poor idiots. But it's still one of those things that makes me very sad, because what happens to point and click adventure games now? You have a couple of companies that are willing to do it, but then nobody else is stepping up to the plate. So, final thoughts on this one before we move on into the next story of the evening.
Well, at the very least, we know that the story will get an ending, which I know a lot of people were kind of upset about. So at least there's a comfort in that. But as for where this will lead for Skybound as a studio, it remains to be seen.
Yeah, and the sad reality is like they get an ending. I don't get Wolf Among Us Season 2. They get an ending. I don't get Tales of Monkey Island Season 2. But that's unfortunately the way that the pebble dropped. So goodbye, Telltale. We had good memories with you. We had bad. Mostly bad right now. But hopefully somebody else, like, say, Double Fine, will pick up the slack. All right, so moving on into the next story that we have. This is another continuation in the James Gunn controversy. Oh, jeez. I left on James Gunn, and now I'm coming back on James Gunn. I have nothing to say on the matter. But thankfully,
I just love symmetry like that.
It's even Christmas. I didn't even plan this crap, guys.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, the sun's not even out, but the gun's still out.
Pretty much. Oh, that gives a Predator joke that I don't even want to compliment at that point. Anyway, so yeah, if people were not already familiar, if you have been, once again, living under a rock, James Gunn was fired from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in light of resurfacing tweets that had been made way before he was the director of Guardians of the Galaxy, and he had since apologized for. And even more controversial stuff that came up after that. And unfortunately, because he was working with Disney and the almighty House of Mouse aren't really willing to put up with controversy. They want to kind of move on from it and do other things. And so their solution to that was to fire James Gunn, keep him fired, and now we're talking about delaying Guardians of the Galaxy for another 2 or 3 years and just solidly rebooting it. Well, sucks to be them, because James Gunn just got hired by DC. And he's working on the franchise that tried to emulate him. That's the funniest part about this whole thing. This movie tried to emulate what he had done with Guardians of the Galaxy, and now he's the head writer of Suicide Squad 2. So they're not going to be emulating anymore. They're going to be doing. It's going to be the way it goes. Let's go into that really quick first. So there is talk about him potentially directing it, and from what I understand, David Ayer is not necessarily too on board with that, but at the very least, he is going to be the head writer for Suicide Squad 2. I mean, the ironies abound, guys. What do you think on this whole undertaking?
Makes sense. DC is definitely desperate for a hit right now. Certainly Suicide Squad did well financially, but man, it was maligned by critics. It just was.
Yeah.
So the way I see it's like, oh, Disney fired you, huh? This is our chance.
Somebody's asking in the chat, why don't you guys talk scary movies instead? I don't know. Suicide Squad was pretty scary. Scary bad, I mean.
Scary. I liked it. God damn it. I'm like the only one who liked it, I swear. But anyway, so I can definitely see all the folks at Warner and DC, twirling their mustaches and wriggling their fingers together like that, and then like, oh, Disney's gonna fire him. This is our big chance. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody at DC is like, we can save this thing because now we can bring in one of the Marvel Magic guys to save our DC movies.
Yeah, and we'll see if this works a little bit better than when it did for Joss Whedon, but I mean that's a whole nother story. At least Gunn's getting a chance to restructure this from the ground up, given as a sequel.
And that is something you could technically say Joss didn't get the opportunity. He was finishing Zack Snyder's work.
Yeah, he had to go patch together Justice League from what Snyder had started, and now Gunn is going to get his chance to invigorate Suicide Squad 2 from the ground up. I know he's going to have the first one to work off of, but still, obviously the second one, there's plenty of new. And given all the now crazy, mad scrambling restructuring DC's trying to do in the wake of Justice League flopping, there's probably going to be a lot that they're probably going to give them quite a bit of leeway to kind of restructure things that they probably don't have to worry as much about the original.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, a lot of people thought for some reason that I was totally against this because I'd rather have him doing Guardians of the Galaxy. Dude, if I was in Warner Brothers right here and now and I heard all the controversy that followed James Gunn, I'd be like, you guys do not know what you're missing until you hire him. Hire him, please. He has already got established cred. All we have to do is put his name in the trailer and he will bring the Guardians fans flocking. That's all that needs to happen.
Oh, on an early point, did you say David Ayer wasn't big on Gunn?
No. The rumor is supposedly that James Gunn was going to be brought in to write and direct, and supposedly David Ayer has an issue with the directing part of it.
No, he's fine with it because Ayer wasn't on board.
So he's clarified then.
Yeah, because Ayer's not even attached.
Yeah, he's not in the sequel. It was a different guy. Then that guy got. I don't know if he got fired or if he left or whatever.
That's all the better then.
Like, I mean, especially when you consider that Ayer was more or less fired off of the original and they re-edited the film and reshot the film.
Yeah.
There was no chance he was coming back. I mean,
no,
you don't come back to a franchise after you're kicked off and your whole movie is reshot. So
yeah, and frankly, this is a good decision as far as I am concerned, because here's the thing. Disney, while like we have testimony saying that with Guardians of the Galaxy, James Gunn was given, full reign to do whatever he wants. It's Disney. He wasn't given that. Like, he had to stay within a certain context, and he was getting assessed. It was happening. We all can attest to that. Warner Brothers, given the situation that they're in, they might rein him in a little bit, but he's going to have free reign. He can do what he wants to do.
Well,
Is that necessarily a good thing? I don't know.
Yeah, that remains to be seen, because sometimes you have some creators that there are some creators that when you lift the shackles, they can produce great work, but there are other creators that you sometimes need to put them in a box in order for them to produce great work. So those would be your Mark Millars and your Alan Moores, who, when given free reign, they come up with stuff that is just weird and out there and doesn't really work. Yeah. But if you put them under the right limitations, they can actually produce some really incredible stuff. I mean, Alan Moore, for example, there was I've only seen the story as an episode of the Justice League cartoon, but it was an Alan Moore story. It had all the same trappings of an Alan Moore story, but it didn't go completely off the deep end.
I'm trying to remember which one was it?
It was the one where it was the one where like there's that parasite that latches onto Superman and he sees like an alternate version of Krypton that never got destroyed.
That's right. Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, and then with Mark Millar, we have success stories like Kick-Ass, but then we have some of the other stories that aren't as good because he was given a lot of free reign. I mean, when you look at the original graphic novel for Kingsman, you can see why they made the changes they did for the movie.
Pretty much. And I also find it very funny because the Shadow Blazer just put in the live chat that we have that Gavin O'Connor, which was the accountant, he was said to be the previous frontrunner and writer to write and direct Suicide Squad 2. Yeah,
no, he wasn't. He wasn't an accountant. That was one of his other movies.
That is the name of
it. That's what I mean. The film, The Accountant. He was said to be the previous frontrunner, and considering like, I'm not knocking Gavin O'Connor. I'm not doing that. But when you look at the previous Suicide Squad and what it was trying to do, it was trying to be DC's Guardians of the Galaxy. It only makes sense to bring Gunn in. And to continue to follow that train. And the other thing that a lot of people might not consider or necessarily say is a plus for him is that he's already bound into the same cast that he had for the previous movie. And my argument to that is that's bullshit because he's not. That's the beauty of the Suicide Squad is you can literally have members swap in and out. I have a feeling there will be a couple of mainstays in there. Whether or not Will Smith is one of them, I doubt, because I don't think Will's willing to come back. But Margot Robbie might be willing to come back. The bottom line is like if you had problems with the previous cast or what they were trying to do with the story, James Gunn can literally just write them out and say, "Oh, they went to another prison, and now I have the cast that I want to be able to tell stories with."
But I guess it also really depends on how they're going to approach whether if it's going to even continue the same story from the previous one, or if they're going to do what they're doing with the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix, where it's a case of, oh, it's a Suicide Squad movie, but we're no longer tethering people to the cinematic universe because that didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, the slate here is pretty much blank. You can continue the story of the original Suicide Squad. I doubt they're going to. Or you could, I've already heard this kind of bounced about, is like take the DC animated movies route and just pick a story out of Suicide Squad and tell that. So, for example, when the DC animated movies did the Hell to Pay storyline, you could do that and you could make that work, and it's James Gunn. Like, all he has to do is read it and see what he can do with it. And again, just to the cast issue, like, you know, Will Smith is not necessarily a big loss when you can bring in other prominent villains to be able to fulfill his role. And frankly, Will is probably going to be busy off doing other projects, so I don't think he's going to be on board. Margot, I think, is going to come back just because working with James Gunn. But they've also might have another volunteer for their cast as Dave Bautista, who has been a very staunch ally of James Gunn in the Guardians of the Galaxy situation. He has actually since asked for his release, and I think he's going to get it from Guardians of the Galaxy. He has since stated that, yeah, he already wants in on Suicide Squad 2. Don't know who he's going to play, but he wants in.
Yeah, I guess that's a real question of who could he play. I mean, off the top of my head, I mean, if they wanted to introduce a new version of Bane, I could see Bautista playing Bane. He's got the physique for it, and so long as you don't have him try to do the mumblecore we got with Tom Hardy, it could work. I've already seen people saying, like, no, he should take over for the guy who played Croc. No, don't.
there's a reason that Dave Bautista was not put in too much makeup when he was playing Drax the Destroyer, is because he has that excellent physique. You don't want to cover that up. So yeah, I don't think that putting him in the croc makeup is a good idea. I have heard things banded about that he should be a new Captain Boomerang. I've also heard that he should be Captain Cold. I don't know if I necessarily buy those.
Well, yeah, when you consider the physique and what he can do as a performer, you definitely want him to play someone who's very much the bruiser. And that's why someone like Bane would be a good fit, because Bane is the muscle. If you put him on some sort of a team, in like a team heist, even if it's just a typical Batman Rogues Alley sort of thing, yeah, he's pretty much the muscle. That's his main thing. He's very intelligent and is very much a quick thinker and can rival Batman's intellect. And so Bautista, Bane would probably be my pick because he's shown that he can handle that. And I mean, come on, if you're going to get Dave Bautista and not have him do any sort of like physical combat sort of role, then why the hell are you hiring Dave
exactly, because that's kind of what he's built to be able to do.
Yeah, it's like casting Michael Jackson as the Scarecrow and not having him dance. It didn't make sense.
And then another idea that actually gets brought up that I don't know if I necessarily agree with, because I think it falls under the exact same problem as Croc, is Solomon Grundy, and having him play Solomon Grundy. My only issue with that is that, again, you're putting him under a lot of makeup and probably even some CG. And so at that point, you're, again, covering up the physique of Dave Bautista. So that's not necessarily the way that I would go with it. I would find something like Bane, something like a bruiser type or a military type for him to be able to play. And specifically something where, yeah, he can have his shirt off, because you want him to have his shirt off.
Yeah, you got to show them muscles, because that's part of. I mean, that's why you cast someone like Dave Bautista. I mean, yeah, he can act, but I mean, come on, we all know why people like watching him. He's big, he's strong, and you couple that with comedy, and he's basically like a lesser known version of The Rock.
That's exactly what I was actually going to say, is like, if you look at Bautista's career right now, he looks very reminiscent of The Rock's early Hollywood career, where he kept on landing comedy roles and things like that. And now Dwayne doesn't have that problem because he's doing the movies that he wants to do. Ironically, hiring his his ex-wife to be basically his agent. I continue to giggle at that concept. He hired his ex-wife to be his agent, and that's how he got Fast and Furious. So there you go. And that Dave Bautista has the same problem. I'm thoroughly convinced that they were going to reboot Doom right now, they'd go and call Dave Bautista to go and play Dwayne Johnson's role, because Dwayne doesn't even fit that anymore.
Yeah, I'm even looking at like other characters that have been.
That's the problem, is like you can't really think of a whole lot. Another idea that got brought up was Lobo. I don't know if you want to try and even halfway explain Lobo.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do Lobo, I mean, Lobo would basically be DC's answer to Deadpool when you really think about it.
Which, I mean, a lot of people love Dave Bautista for the hilarious lines that Drax got, but you got to remember, it wasn't, he was delivering the lines, but it was James Gunn writing them. So at that point, the writer can fall flat. I hate to say that, guys, but like, he can have a joke that falls flat.
Yeah.
So, and another one is, Bane gets brought up. I actually have a few people saying they agree with you that he should be playing a modern version of Bane. And some people were actually saying, like, I guess a modern version of Bane actually doesn't involve the Venom.
Yeah, like actually the whole notion of Venom has kind of more or less been written out, because when you consider the other parts,
are we talking about like where he was like a South American gorilla?
Yeah, that would be
okay.
Where he grew up in a South American prison, because it's a whole, his parents were criminals. He was born while they were incarcerated, and so he had to serve out their sentence. You basically have what you had in The Dark Knight Rises of him growing up in this prison and literally fighting his way to the top, going to Gotham City and thinking, okay, who's the top dog in the underworld here in Gotham? Oh, the Batman? Okay, I got to take out the Batman. If you take that approach with Bane, you could do the Venom stuff.
Which would make sense. Like, Dave Bautista is really good at playing alpha male.
Yeah, and so that is why it would work. And if you wanted to add the Venom stuff, you could, but you'd have to really downplay. You wouldn't want to go the Schumacher route of, that's all his character is, where he's just a roided up rage monster. Because Bane as a character is a lot smarter than that. He's not the Hulk. That's the problem. No. A lot of bad writers treat him like the Hulk, but Bane is the scarier version. He's the much scarier version. He's got all that strength, but he's also really freaking smart. This is why there was a literal storyline where they were weighing the possibility of whether or not he could actually be Bruce Wayne's long-lost brother. Again, they resolved it in a very weird way, but that's how intelligent he is. It's like, oh, could he? It's because he literally is like an evil version of Batman. He's just got the strength, he's got the intellect, he just doesn't have the money, which is why he goes after Batman. So
I'm going to bring this one up. I don't necessarily buy into it, but since Romney brought up Deadpool, Deathstroke the Terminator, could he play Deathstroke? I don't think so.
Nah. His sort of physique, I wouldn't really see it as a Deathstroke, because, I mean, unless you were going for, like, Rob Liefeld.
The beloved Deathstroke is supposed to be pretty old. And so at that point, again, you have a makeup job. And, again, you can't have him with his shirt off. Like, Deathstroke is known for the combat attire that he wears.
Yeah, but at the same time, the other issue as well, I mean, especially when you consider... I mean, when you look at the way the characters fight, Bane, he's the puncher, he's a grappler. Dave Bautista's physique works for that sort of role. Yeah. Deathstroke, he's more of a swordsman. So, I mean, you would want someone who is playing Deathstroke. I mean, that's why back at the first Salt Lake Comic-Con, when Ray Park was kind of when people asked Ray Park what character he would want to play in either Marvel or DC, when he brought up DC, literally the audience shouted Deathstroke, because someone like Ray Park you can see as Deathstroke, because
he's got the physique to be able to pull it off,
and the skill, because Ray Park is he does wushu.
Well, you have the double take of, like, you don't have to pay a stunt double for him, because he could literally do all the stunt work.
Yeah, and so it's a case of, and just in terms of aesthetics, you want someone who's a bit more lanky, a bit more thin, because he relies mainly on guns, on weaponry. He's basically like Solid Snake if Solid Snake was a DC villain. So you'd want someone with a more limber physique to play Deathstroke. Bautista, I just don't see that.
No. Alex, you've been kind of quiet on this matter. What's your take on Dave Bautista wanting to join Suicide Squad 2 along with his buddy James Gunn?
Really glad he's always been sticking by Gunn's side through this whole situation, and he's really willing to.
And we're not saying anything bad about the previous, about the Guardians cast. We know why they don't want to do that, but he has the leeway to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that shows how. I mean, to me, that's really that's a director who has a really strong repertoire with some of his actors. If people are willing to outspokenly speak for you and also wanting to follow you to another project after already being on one other giant high-profile project, willing to go to another one for you, I mean, that definitely shows me Gunn has a really strong repertoire with his cast members. So as to a character he could play, I love the ideas of what you are suggesting when it comes to Bane. Beyond that, I don't know a whole lot of other DC rogues. So
the problem is there aren't a whole lot of bruiser DC villains that he would fit the role of. I mean, Solomon Grundy, he would, but again, that'd be a very extensive makeup job.
Yeah, and also, again, this goes into having to put him in a lot of makeup or cover him up with a lot of CGI.
And before people jump down our throats, yes. So sorry, I'm not meaning to interrupt, but before people jump down our throats, yes, as Drax, he was put under a lot of makeup, but it wasn't covering the physique. Okay, it was far from it. They were trying to accentuate it with tattoos and be able to show like he's a badass. With Solomon Grundy, you have to put him in like the suit he was buried in, which already covers up the physique. You can tear it up as much as you want, but then also he's supposed to be undead, which means you have to add in some kind of CGI, and you're covering up this amazing asset that you have in front of you. Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Right. Another, I guess he's not really a rogue, is he? But Swamp Thing comes to mind as far as like DC characters that he could potentially play. Again, I know it's putting him into like makeup or CGI.
And there actually is a Swamp Thing movie because Swamp Thing is a beloved hero right now.
Well, yeah, and I just like, as soon as I thought like Swamp Thing, I'm just like, so you basically have Drax and have him playing an intelligent version of Groot.
And instead of being all literal, he just has to replace every word with the green.
Right.
Yeah. pretty much. But I'm not saying he couldn't pull off the physique, but again, you have makeup, you have CG that needs to be done with that. I think they already even have their Swamp Thing cast, don't they?
I have no idea, actually.
I'm not sure.
Even with I mean, even with makeup, at least the thing with like makeup or costuming, that still is a way to show off a pretty strong physique. It's like back when they got David Prowse, a bodybuilder, to fill the suit of Darth Vader, or you got big bodybuilders to do the suits for like Alien or Predator.
Yeah.
That's so.
I mean, speaking of pro wrestling, for a lot of people who don't actually know this, Kevin Nash was brought in to be the live action Super Shredder in Turtles 2. And one of the most memorable things from that movie that a lot of people will bring up is those Super Shredder moments. And they specifically wanted a dude who was well into 6 foot, in fact, almost 7 foot, and muscular to be able to pull it off. And they did.
Yeah, so I think if you just stick to practical costuming and makeup, it still would show off his great physique and his impressive stature.
Yeah,
all the same as if you have to leave him untouched without a whole lot of makeup. So that would be my solution to that: is stick with practical costuming and makeup. Then you still get the best of his physique and his prowess.
Yeah. Now we have another suggestion. I'm going to leave it at that, and then we need to move into the next story. But this one, I think Romney needs to react to. Another suggestion: John Constantine. First of all, what the hell? I don't think John has ever interacted with the Suicide Squad.
He has. Like, the character has. I know that.
Okay, so he has. But then at that point, why? Because again, the John Constantine attire does not lend to being something that could complement Dave Bautista. And frankly, I like the frailer John Constantine, not necessarily a muscle-bound freak on it.
Yeah, because especially when you consider John Constantine is a detective. Like, he may not literally be a detective, but that's the idea behind his stories, is that he's basically almost the precursor to Harry Dresden. And so that would be like woeful miscasting, would be having him as John Constantine.
I mean, I kind of get the argument that's being made, like in between wrestling career and then going on to do Drax. He lost a lot of weight. He's a little bit frailer than he used to be when he was in his full on WWE career, but he's still pretty muscle bound at that point. Like he's a little thinner, don't get me wrong, but he's still pretty big.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily fit.
Well, yeah, it's very much, it's the classic Robert Redford as Superman argument, where if you put him as Constantine, people aren't going to see Constantine. They're going to see Dave Bautista dressed up as Constantine for Halloween. I
mean, if you're going to cast a wrestler to play John Constantine, and I'm not saying you should, you'd be aiming for something more like Tyler Breeze than anything else. And you guys can look it up if you want to. I'm not really looking to do the wrestling analogies here, but there's much more of a recommended guy, or an even better one is like Jack Gallagher, might be, because he's thinner and frailer. Not Bautista, not for John Constantine. That's a waste. You want a talker for that. Pardon the wrestling pun, but you want a legit talker for that.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to consider going with like a hero that would be part of the Justice League Dark roster, I can maybe see him as Deadman, but that's about it.
Yeah, Deadman makes sense because the background. So at that point you could pull off Deadman, but again, you'd be putting him in spandex, so you'd kind of be covering him up.
Well, I mean,
I'm not necessarily against it.
He was in the WWE, so he's probably no stranger to spandex. So.
Oh no! I'm just saying, like, you'd be covering up the manly chest and all that stuff. But
it is
the outfit that Deadman's in. It's not necessarily a non-compliment.
Well, yeah. Plus, it's spandex. It's like, it's just, yeah. Yeah.
And the best part is like so correct me if I'm wrong. Deadman was like a acrobat before he died, right?
I think so.
Great. Now I'm going into my head like Dave Bautista is one of the Flying Graysons.
Well, I mean,
that's weird.
You could repurpose, if like considering that Deadman's abilities, you could kind of repurpose it where instead of an acrobat, he was maybe a wrestler in the earlier days of wrestling. You
probably could, yeah. And it would work.
Yeah, like for some reason it reminds me of this. There was an episode of Little House on the Prairie I saw recently that involved wrestling that showed like kind of the old school wrestling with like the leotards and stuff like that. And so like, okay, if you had it where Deadman was one of these old school style wrestlers that died and ended up getting the powers, it could work.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, final thoughts on this one, because we're running out of time here, and I want to make sure that we get to a special treat for you guys, and we have one more story to go into. Final thoughts on James Gunn being the director or the writer for Suicide Squad 2, possibly being the director, and then Dave Bautista possibly joining him.
Well, I'm somewhat optimistic because he is a good screenwriter. I mean, if people remember my analysis of Dawn of the Dead, he was the screenwriter for the remake of Dawn of the Dead, which was directed by Zack Snyder. But again, he's a good screenwriter, and so I'm at least willing to give it a chance, but I'll withhold judgment until we start seeing trailers.
Exactly. Alex, what's your take?
Yeah, I'm very interested. I hope again it lands this gig, because I'd be interested to see his take, see where he'd go with Suicide Squad from here. Again, I am one of the weirdos who enjoyed the first Suicide Squad enough, so the sequel I've been a little more apprehensive about, because I'm thinking maybe not the best idea, but having Gunn on it could probably bring a little more positive publicity. So also to answer your question earlier, it looks like there is casting for the new Swamp Thing streaming series that they're doing for next year.
It's a series. Okay.
Yeah, it's they might be doing a movie, but I see just a series here. It's Derek Mears, or Mears. I'm not quite sure how you say his name. That's who's said to play him now.
Okay. All right. Well, moving on into this next story, and this one I actually might need a little help from Alex here, because I think he's actually followed the situation a little bit better than I have. But we've had a little bit of YouTube drama once again. It seems to be kind of a regular this year, as we keep on having YouTubers going against each other. And in this case, we have the ever-dramatic Keemstar making some accusations against Philip Defranco. Now, we've mentioned Phil Defranco a couple of times. We've taken his analysis and kind of put it into our take on a given story. This one, however, is actually against Defranco and a few others, including Boogie2988 and Shane Dawson, specifically regarding an app called BetterHelp. Now, this is actually from an organization that I'll go into this kind of briefly, and then you can kind of fill in the details, Alex. But the app is basically it's called BetterHelp, and it's supposed to basically give you, if you need some help, if you need to be able to talk to somebody over depression, over whatever you're dealing with, the purpose of the BetterHelp app is to give you that, to be able to put you in with somebody that you can talk to, whether it be a therapist, whether it be like a group therapy kind of setting. You can kind of set those terms. And Defranco, along with Boogie and Shane Dawson, have been advertising the heck out of this app. And it turns out that they probably shouldn't have been. And so why don't you go ahead and take over from there, Alex, and explain why they shouldn't have been advertising BetterHelp as much as they did.
All right. So BetterHelp, as you've probably already put in the nutshell here, it is a health app to ideally kind of be the alternative to expensive in-session counseling for anybody who might need therapy. So, the app has really advertised itself as the better alternative solution. Now, and it's not just Keemstar, like this other channel, Memology, this is where I kind of discovered this whole untheme folding, kind of discovered there's a little bit of weird shadiness in their terms of service, which is kind of usual legalese for a lot of companies like this to kind of cover themselves. Like, They don't really verify, that they don't make any claims that these counselors are all screened and appropriate, and that they expect you, the end user, to do your own due diligence. So right. So it's a bit of the usual legal counteracting the advertising. That's pretty typical. So, and where Phil Defranco kind of falls into this is Phil Defranco has been a big sponsor of, and likewise, vice versa. They've been big sponsors and partners with each other on company levels now.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, Phil has also been a user of this too.
Yes, he says he's a user, and I have no reason to think otherwise. I think he's genuine about using it. So is Boogie, as you mentioned. Boogie2988 has also been a user. A lot of people have been using the service because a lot of them have wanted this kind of alternative to traditional therapy. So besides the kind of shady gray terms of services, there's obviously a lot of negative reviews of it. There's a lot of accusations that they kind of curtail any reviews purely to their site and kind of go after to the validity of that. I can't say, because I know in one of Defranco's responses, he did show off other sites that have aggregated reviews of it. Not to mention online reviews can also be pretty easily manipulated. Now, the problem with BetterHelp's own review section is they're subject to their review. You email your review, your experience, if you have a problem, and you, of course, send it to them, and they review it. So there's also siphoning content from there.
Yep. Now,
kind of getting back to where Defranco also factors into this, Defranco, as being the big YouTube influencer that he is, set up a lot of his fellow content creators as to get in on the sponsorship deal. And of course, Defranco being the one who kind of helped with that, he's kind of getting his own little finder's fee out of that, and he's getting a cut of their shares for people who followed their sponsored links. So they're getting their share of the revenue that they'd get from this sponsorship, from this joint advertising venture, but so is Defranco. So it's kind of going splitting a few different ways. So people are calling him out on that, and that's that, really. That's the whole thing in a nutshell. Now it's kind of been this back and forth between people like Keemstar and people like Memology 101 to...
Well, and I think we both can kind of come to this agreement. If Keemstar's involved, it's not going to end pretty.
Yeah. And,
like, as much as we don't want to admit that, like, Keemstar is, there's a reason he's the head of Drama Alert right now.
Yeah. Keemstar, honestly, I get there's the whole concept of, like, there's the kind of the ethical gray area of, like, should you be really using people's own mental health and people's own personal problems to make an advertising profit off of yourself? That's, definitely an ethical gray area there. But Keemstar doesn't really have any moral high ground to stand on. His whole channel is the basis of pitting YouTubers against each other and profiting off of people's misery.
That's one of the things I kind of noticed. Like, things can be heard about Keemstar over the various years that he's been on Drama Alert or when he's been doing things personally. But then when you actually see him in action, I think the ethical thing kind of goes out the window. I think he outright, like, as soon as he finds something that he can get you on, he doesn't stop till he wrecks your life, kind of thing. And the example that I'm going to give, which is a more recent one, is the whole Mundane Matt situation. Am I saying that Mundane Matt was in the right? No, he wasn't. But wow, Keemstar, it was like you were bored one day and you just decided to keep hammering and hammering and hammering this one particular point, and you'd already made a dozen different points, kind of thing. So that's the other problem that I have with this Defranco situation, is that it's just from the framing of Keemstar, it's just he's looking for another guy to wreck.
Mm-hmm. Now, as to Boogie's situation, the same podcast from Memology that I've mentioned, he doesn't just do podcasts, he also does individual videos. That's where I found this whole shady business unfolding here. Now, Boogie feigned ignorance, and again, I don't have any reason to doubt that. I don't have any real reason to do that, to feel he's being disingenuous there. But this, which is where people kind of bring it in. It's like Defranco right now is kind of the one taking a lot of the heat for this, because he has been one of their biggest endorsers of BetterHelp. But Boogie, when they interviewed Boogie about this, Boogie feigned ignorance, and Boogie's excuse was, well, I have a brand manager and I wasn't properly informed. Well, and so people are kind of harping on Defranco for not really, like, properly informing his network, that one, that he's getting a cut, two, that about the sort of shady legal terms of services that go on. And I'm like,
the other thing I've heard in Boogie's case is, like, again, this is just another classic example of Boogie just not being in the loop. It doesn't matter who he has in charge. He just likes to be conveniently made aware of things he feels he needs to know.
And to me, for all the people who jumped on this, from whether through Phil Defranco or whether they got reached out to personally, it's like, I'm sorry, but nobody is here at fault but yourself. you should have done your own due diligence. You should have asked your questions. You should have looked into the service. You should have, maybe even tried it for yourself. And yeah, I'm sure some of them did and had great experiences. Again, I think Phil is one of those people. So is Boogie. Because at the end, Boogie still stood by the services. He did say, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. I understand. But, even Boogie's had to backpedal. I think a lot of the heat that's coming on Defranco right now is just people wanting to dogpile him for the sake of dogpiling him. And it's
exactly
nonsense.
When you first brought this up, I didn't know a whole lot on it, but like as soon as I looked into it, I mean, I hate to bring up the same example, but this looked like Monday Matt all over again. It's like, okay, yeah, some crap went down, and I completely acknowledge that. But at the same time, we're continuing to hammer this and put in way more nails into this coffin than actually need to be. And when are we actually gonna leave this situation alone and get on with our lives?
Yeah, I mean, I get this is a slightly bigger issue than what Mundane Matt is doing, because again, we are talking people's. I'm just saying by example. Yeah, and I get that too. So, but I have to agree. I mean, and here's again more to Phil's credit, and there are some things I agree he could be doing a little bit better on. Phil's suspended his brand deal with them for the time being because he wants to do a little more in-depth coverage and a little more research. He wants to go actually to BetterHelp's offices and see how they vet their trained psychologists or counselors or however they hire their people. He has also agreed to bring along a quote-unquote third-party journalist. Why he doesn't say who, he just says third-party journalist. This is where one of the elements I think he could do better on is to actually say who he's bringing on, what their credentials are, who they're with, so on and so forth. But, it sounds like Defranco does want to do his due diligence. He does, right?
Which is admirable.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. There, it is a simple, many people are just saying, why not just terminate your brand sponsorship with them? Fair enough. That is an easy thing to do, but if Defranco wants to do his due diligence, let him do his due diligence, especially if there is more to see here when it comes to BetterHelp, and see if this is a company that maybe is way too good to be true and probably shouldn't be totally trusted with your money.
Well, and way more importantly is like, this is good common sense. Like if you did some work with them and then you found out that they had some improprieties, you go in and do your extra homework with them. And then if you find that, they're scum is scum, then you separate from them. That's the best way to be able to do it. But to write them off instantly as scum because a bunch of other people are telling you that instead of you experiencing it yourself, that's also kind of a scummy thing to do, because they might not necessarily be wrong. Or they might not necessarily be right on it. It still might be a good service. It's just that they haven't had good experience with it. Stephen Romney, you've been kind of quiet on this whole thing. I know for a fact that before we started this thing up, you were kind of as uninformed on the situation as me. So after hearing this from Alex as well as myself, what's your take on the Defranco Keemstar situation?
Well, to kind of give context for the listeners at home, my stream glitched out partway through, and so I didn't hear the entirety of the explanation. But looking at the reviews of BetterHelp, like I'm on the website Reviewopedia, which lists a bunch of customer reviews, 314 in total. There are a lot of one-star reviews, and so I can see why a lot of people would have some concerns, especially with concerns of having their information shared without their consent, even though it is in the terms of service. And so it's hard to say, because again, I'm not particularly fond of Keemstar, so that may color my perceptions a little bit.
Wait,
but
there are people that are fond of Keemstar?
Yes, but
sadly.
But I do, yeah, and I may not be fond of his channel and the way he conducts himself, but I do understand where his outrage may be coming from, because let's face it, throughout history, people have preyed upon people with mental health problems for the sake of a quick buck. It is an ongoing problem. It is something that does need to be called out when it happens, and I can see where he's coming from in that regard, especially in regards to getting with the $200 kickback people may seem to be getting when they promote it through their channel. And so I can see where that outrage is coming from. At least Phil Defranco is saying, okay, I'm going to do my due diligence. I'm going to actually take a look at this and actually investigate this company, make sure that they're legit. So at least it shows that he's willing to actually do more research about it. As for the service itself, I can, looking at the reviews and looking at kind of the way it's designed, I can kind of see the main problems of trying to find a way to basically match up, basically trying to do online counseling. It's a very sticky thing. So as for where I'm standing on it, I can understand why Keemstar is calling out this service and calling out their YouTubers promoting it, especially when it may be a case where they're not entirely informed one way or another about how the service actually works, which again can happen to people because, I mean, especially if you look at smaller YouTubers who find a company willing to sponsor them and they think, hey, I'm getting sponsored, which means I'll get paid for making my videos. Of course, they're going to jump on it. I mean, many people may recall I did a couple of Loot Crate sponsored videos for a while. Yep. And that was just because, it was the first chance I had to actually do a sponsored video.
I did too. They got taken down because I was working with them to get the sponsorship, but it hadn't gone through yet.
Yeah, and so it's a sticky thing. I mean, at least Philip DeFranco is doing the responsible thing and actually taking the time to fully investigate the company as best as he can. Yeah. And at the same time, I understand where Keemstar is coming from in calling this company out and calling the people promoting it out. It's very much, it's a case of, I can see where both sides are coming from. And looking at the reviews, at least on Reviewopedia, and the amount of one-star reviews talking about people getting charged beyond the free trial period, even though they've tried to cancel, or people who have been unable to cancel. The major common complaints usually seem to be with their vetting process of their counselors and their customer service. So, yeah, I can see why people would be upset that major YouTubers who have a lot of influence could be promoting an app that could be doing more harm than good, especially when dealing with mental health. So the only takeaway I can give from this is, people, if you're seeking genuine help, don't try to go for the one-size-fits-all option. This is something you really need to...
There are definitely services that just don't make sense going online for. Just looking at it from my perspective, I get that counselors are hard to find. But the bottom line is would I want to hold a therapy session in a chat room? No, not really. Mainly because I just don't think that session would be all that productive. And that's just because I want the therapist to see my genuine reactions.
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of aspects of diagnosing mental health problems that require someone observing the way someone talks and carries themselves, whether you're looking for specific tells whenever someone is talking about a specific source of trauma or a specific emotion they're feeling. You can kind of tell when someone is holding back or when someone is more or less... I mean, a good example is if you have someone who's used to doing undercover work as a police officer and how they can mimic other people's body language, and sometimes they'll subconsciously mimic the body language of the person they're talking to in order to build that rapport, even if they're not aware that they're doing that. And so this is one of those things where I understand where the appeal may be in creating some sort of online therapy format, even if it is just a referral service to therapists.
That's what I think it should be. It shouldn't be online therapy sessions. It should be like an online referral service.
Yeah,
that's what it should be.
That's probably the best way to go about it. And even then, there are better ways to go about it than through an app. And if people who want to try the mental health through an app thing, there's probably a much better way to do it that doesn't cost any money. And that would be Wobot, which I've promoted on the show before, which is basically... Yes, it's an automated artificial intelligence that is meant to help people with mental health issues. It's currently free because they're using it to get more information so it can better do its job. But at least that one, you're basically IMing a robot through Facebook Messenger, but at least there you're not having to actually put up real money for it because you can do it completely for free. But to kind of get to my main point, and I speak as someone who went through the process to actually find a therapist and start working through his issues, you can't really take the easy way. You can't really find an easy shortcut when trying to find mental health care that you need, because there's just no way to really make it more convenient or more affordable or accessible, because there's just certain factors that need to be in place.
You technically can. You can take the easy route. A lot of people just they want to go and vent their frustrations, but they don't necessarily want to work through them with a counselor. That's where I would say that's the difference between you and them, Romney, is you wanted to go and get some work done. All right. You wanted to be able to vent your frustrations, but then you also wanted to go, okay, how can I fix this so that this doesn't happen again? And there are a lot of people that just want to go and vent their frustrations. They're not necessarily looking to fix anything, kind of thing. And so at that point, I mean, for them, this is probably a good fix for it. I will also say another beef that I have with some of the terms of service complaints there. I get the sharing of information is a problem, but another one that kind of bothered me, and I wasn't able to find it actually in the terms of service, so maybe it's been modified at this point. But there was talk about one. They may have changed it where a therapist, if you start showing, for lack of a better term, volatility in stuff, like if you're starting to show an indication like you might actually hurt yourself, people got mad at the fact that the therapist would then need to share your information. That's not necessarily on BetterHelp. That's a therapist's thing. If you're actually giving tells that you're going to hurt yourself, the therapist is required to actually inform your local, not necessarily local police, but like give a complaint in to save you, to help you.
Yeah, and that's actually something that varies on a state-by-state basis, because it's either if you're at risk of hurting yourself, they may send in a notification, but that notice usually more commonly occurs of if someone is showing signs of possibly hurting other people or possibly committing some sort of crime. I know in Utah, we have such laws in place where if someone is showing signs that they may actually commit some sort of crime and is disclosed to their therapist, I don't know if they are required to disclose it, but that's kind of one of those grounds of, hey, this person might go and hurt someone.
In this state, yes, they are.
Yeah, and so that's one of those cases where that's usually where that prerogative is usually applied, is in the instances in which people are showing signs they may hurt other people.
Yeah, and so at that point, like a lot of people were making the claim of like, this is a violation of my privacy. Unfortunately, no, it's not. And it gets covered. If you go to an actual therapist's office, it's covered in their agreement. Like if you give an indication that you're going to hurt yourself or you're going to hurt other people, they do need to notify somebody. Otherwise, that actually costs them. They can lose their license. They can actually get legit lawsuits put on them.
Yeah, lawsuits, jail time. It's basically like the equivalent of them knowing about a crime and choosing not to report it. And
so, I hate to be the guy. That's not a terms of service violation. That's literally part of their job.
Yeah, it's a law too. Like in some states, it's not even just, that's part of a condition for their license. It's like an actual codified, if they do not report it, then they themselves will go to jail.
Exactly. So, unfortunately, we're running out of time tonight, but I did at least wanted to cover this up. Or not cover this up, but cover it. So final thoughts on this situation. Like I still feel it's unfortunate that we're having to hear about this through a Twitter feud, or not a Twitter feud, but a YouTube feud between Phil Defranco and Keemstar. And I do actually agree with Phil Defranco. I think that he is taking the steps that are necessary in this given situation. Is that going to necessarily get Keemstar off his back? Probably not.
It's Keemstar. He never stops.
Keemstar is basically a pit bull. He is going to go until he gets blood.
Well, yeah, Keemstar is basically the Harvey Levin of YouTube, where if it's not one controversy, he'll find another. Now, again, to his credit, I can see where the outrage is coming from, though, because again, there are a lot of really scuzzy people that take advantage of people with legitimate problems.
It's just one of those complicated situations where it's a guy that is pretty much hated on YouTube. He's kind of in the right.
Yes, and so that's the best way is that we may not like him, but his outrage is justified.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Alex, final thoughts on this one.
Well, as much as I do kind of hate the over the top dogpiling mentality that is going on, I am glad this is an issue that has been brought to light.
Sure.
Again, like we said, Keemstar, whatever, he may have a point, and he does. So it is good that people are bringing this to light and are shedding light into this controversy. And, because shady bullshit apps like that, like this, like BetterHelp, they do need to be called out, and they do need to be put in under a microscope. And for everybody else, for the rest of us, for anybody who does get a brand deal, do your diligence, do your homework, and make sure this is a product and a service that you yourself would either want to use or that you feel comfortable in endorsing or advertising, even if you aren't, right? Don't shill yourself out for for brands that do this kind of nonsense. Make sure it's a product that you at least think it may not work for everybody, but I'm going to be able to sleep at night knowing I'm not doing something really terrible.
Yeah, that's a more general thing though. Like if you're going to sign on to a sponsor, like if I'm reaching out to get a sponsor for Geek News, for the Geek News podcast, I'm not going to do it half-hearted. I'm going to do it full-hearted to do my homework, do my due diligence, see what the product is, test it myself, see if I actually like it. If I'm not going to like it, give it to some friends and see how they take it. And then at that point, go from there kind of thing. And that's what Phil Defranco should have done here. It doesn't sound to me like he did as much as he probably should have, but that's really what should have happened. If you're going to take on a sponsorship deal like this, do your freaking homework.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a lot easier to endorse a product that you actually believe in than to endorse one that you don't.
Yeah, exactly. So the last little bit of tonight's podcast is something requested by you guys as listeners and fans of the Geek News podcast. As I've said earlier on in the podcast, I was absent for a number of weeks, and while I was absent, it seemed like controversy tended to flock to both of these hosts as I was taking care of baby. So at that point, a lot of you guys wanted to actually hear my reaction to some of the major stories that actually did happen. You got to see some of that because I did actually try to make my way into these podcasts via chat and give my opinions on them. But now you get a legit hands-on opinion. And I am happy to bring back the lightning round. We used to be able to do this on the podcast with Aldo Gomez because occasionally he would come in a little late. And we even did it with Romney a couple of times when he would come in late. But this time, Stephen Romney has taken the odious responsibility of being the host of the lightning round while I give you in 30 seconds or less my opinions on the stories that I missed while I was not here. So take it away, Romney.
All right, well, here's how it's going to go. I have my stopwatch app on my phone. We're going to go through these stories. Adam has to summarize his opinion in 30 seconds or less. If he goes over, I will shout time, and we'll move on to the next story. So get ready, children. Rate 3, 2, 1. Story number 1. Patrick Sutherland resigning from EA amidst the Battlefield 5 controversy.
Patrick Sutherland, you already had enough problems aside from Battlefield 5. I'm glad and all that you did EA Originals, but I'm glad you're gone.
All right, 6 seconds. Let's keep going. All right, story number 2. High Guardian Spies. Did you see the trailer, and what did you think of the controversy in the wake of it?
I did. Oh, I did. Oh, the pain. Oh, the horrible pain. So the best way that I know how to say this, guys, is that even though you have a 100% woman staff and a 50% production women staff, it doesn't prevent you from writing a turd. And that's just the bottom line of it. If you're looking for diversity, I might recommend diversity of thought.
All right, you cut it close there. You were 5 seconds. All right, let's keep moving.
There was a lot to go into that one, though.
All right, so next.
If people actually want additional stuff on that, I intend on doing a High Guardian Spice blog because one of the other problems that I've been having with it is just before my baby got born, my Verve app and my Crunchyroll app died. I cannot access them on my Roku without crushing the Roku. So I already have a plenty big rant video on that.
All right, let's keep it moving. You already went over time. You used up what goodwill you had. All right. Story number 3, the debacle regarding Zoe Quinn's Kickstarter for the erotic visual novel. Go.
Man, I'm glad I didn't pay into that Kickstarter.
All right, 4 seconds. You've made up.
I mean, that's the problem. Is a lot of this stuff is going to be very blunt and very to the point. But I that's all I've got on the matter. Like, you guys kind of earned what you got out of that situation, and you paid into it.
All right, moving on. Story number 4, Fortnite causing divorces. Your thoughts?
Oh, Jiminy Christmas. I've been hearing about this since World of Warcraft. A lot of people wanted my opinion from a family perspective because me and my wife do game together, although we don't game together a lot of the time. My viewpoint is it's always sad that this kind of thing happens, but the bottom line is if the foundation of your relationship is based entirely in a video game, a toy, you need a better foundation for your relationship.
All right, you cut it down to with 1 second left. Moving on. Next story is a viewer request. J. Allen Brack is now the CEO of Blizzard. Go.
Fuck you, private servers.
All right. Moving on to the last. Moving on to the last story. That was only 10 seconds, so this is the very last one. Witcher author Andrei Sapkowski threatening to sue Project Red for more money for the Witcher rights. Go.
I'm on CD Projekt Red's side on this particular situation. It's sad that this happened, but the bottom line is that every bit of information shows that the creator did not hold out for additional bonuses and all of the things that he should have been doing to protect his intellectual property, and he didn't do any of that. And I'm always sad to hear when people like Peter S. Beagle get screwed around when their intellectual property is owned by a movie company. So CD Projekt Red, I'm glad that they're willing to come to the table, but frankly, as far as this agreement is concerned, they don't have to.
All right, a little overtime, but I gave you leeway since it was the last story, so that is it for the lightning round.
Yeah, and before people jump down my throat about the J. Allen Brack thing, I literally got approached because of the fact that J. Allen Brack was the guy that pissed off all the private server people. Guys, it's the way it is, and it's one of the greatest ironies. He pissed you off, and then he got to announce WoW Classic for you. And now he's running the damn company. So yeah, evil laugh, engage.
Well, let's hope he finds better PR statements than you think you want that, but you don't.
You know what? That's a 50-50 thing, Alex. I like his bluntness. I actually got a little annoyed with Mike Morhaim's PR in that regard. I'm kind of happy that they're bringing in J. Allen Brack to do that. I agree with you, though. He needs to find a better way to be able to do it, but bluntness sometimes is required. Especially when you're stealing from the company.
That's not an answer. That's just you think that's telling people what they want. You don't. Oh, God, I'm sorry. I don't like when creators.
If you're basing it in just that line, then yes, that's not an answer. But there was more to it than that, and that's what a lot of people tend to ignore. Is that he did actually talk after that?
Okay. Yeah, I just overall I don't like when creators or whatever tell me what I think I want or don't want. It's like, tell me why you think I want that.
You shouldn't. I mean, that's, we brought up Patrick Soderlund. That's how he approached it. He was the head of freaking DICE for years, and he was the guy that was saying microtransactions in Star Wars Battlefront 2 was a good thing. Okay?
Exactly.
In those cases, you're absolutely right in that regard. But in J. Allen Brack's case, and even Tom Chilton's, I believe Tom Chilton, the director of WoW at the time, spoke with him just saying like, yeah, there's a whole lot more to this than you guys actually realize that there is. And just because a bunch of people were able to pull it off doesn't necessarily mean that's how we need to pull it off.
Right.
So that's the part that a lot of people don't take from the J. Allen Brack situation. Is it blunt? Yes. Was it necessary at that point? Yes. Would you rather have J. Allen Brack or Patrick Soderlund? Patrick Soderlund wouldn't tell you how that doesn't work. He'd say, pay me money, and I'll see if I can. Wait 3 years, and then I'll just take your money.
Right.
So basically, that would be like the most skeeviest loot box ever as a CEO.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the other problem that I actually didn't even get into with Patrick is that a lot of people didn't tend to notice this. If you look at the payment gaps between CEOs and average everyday grunts of like game directors of DICE games and everything like that, it was a pretty significant margin. Pretty significant. And so at that point, you could have fixed that. Blizzard fixes that. Yeah. And Patrick was willing to do it because he was willing to get $20 million for sitting around and having ideas and listening to his daughter about Fortnite.
Yeah. Weird tangent, but if you work in the basement of DICE Games and you've gone insane, does that make you a dungeon dice monster?
Pretty much. I think Duke Devlin has personally gone down to capture you. Pretty much. Like, I love the fact that we did this lightning round. That's all the stories that we had for it. But like, where else can you go aside from just going random into a lot of this stuff? I mean, there was actually a lot more when you guys covered the Soderlund story. There was so much more to it that you guys weren't actually able to do. But again, this was the problem of this crap hit when you guys were recording. And so at that given moment, like, you didn't know that Patrick Soderlund was making way more than the average grunt at EA.
I knew that.
You didn't know the whole thing.
I probably didn't know that. You're right. I probably didn't actually know about that till after.
I know for a fact you didn't know about the whole reason why he left, which was a bullshit reason as far as I'm concerned. He basically said that, like, because of the Fortnite comparisons to Battlefield 5, and the only problem that he actually saw with Battlefield 5 was that they put its release date in a troublesome time, that he had to go into the whole, I sat down with my daughter one day and we just kind of discussed, is it okay for a woman to have purple hair in Battlefield? I don't know, honey. Is it? Sorry, guys, but like him being burnt out, I don't buy that. Like, this is one of those times where Mike Morhaime making that excuse for me, and that's why he wants to step down. I buy that because he's actually been out there doing it. Patrick Soderlund, not so much. That's why in a lot of cases I have no problem saying good riddance to bad rubbish. Here's hoping EA will hire somebody better. They probably won't.
Nope. Well, not unless it's someone better for them to make more money.
And there's your problem. They will hire somebody that is better for them. That goes with their mission statement, not necessarily with what's actually right on the matter. So there you go. And I'm already getting criticized in the chat about 30. I thought I bought a lot of time, actually, because Zoe Quinn couldn't really go into that. There really isn't too much to go into. J. Allen Brack, I wanted to do an evil villain laugh. I'll just be honest there. There's no other thing to do with that. And then The Witcher. Actually, no, I went overtime on that one, didn't I?
Well, yeah, but given how quickly you would blast it through the other ones, I gave you a little bit of leeway. Plus, it was the last one, and we basically, And
for all the people that wanted like a legit rant on High Guardian Spice, these guys covered it. Like, literally, I was there when they were talking about it, bouncing between Baby and that, and you guys covered the problem. Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's a dead horse at this point.
Yeah, and frankly, there's been dozens of YouTube videos out there, but like I said, I'm going to do a vlog video because one of the biggest pet peeves during this whole time with the baby has been the fact that all of a sudden I want to watch anime, or I wanted to watch the new Nick Splat app that entered into Verve. Wait, I can't. It literally crashes my Roku. It actually also crashes my PC. I've actually had moments where I've tried to get into Legends of the Hidden Temple on Nick Splat and got 30 seconds into it, and my PC literally blue screened.
Sheesh.
You didn't get to the Shrine of the Silver Monkey.
I did not, in fact, get to the Shrine of the Silver Monkey.
Or you got there, but you had trouble with that damn puzzle.
Indeed, yes. And the other problem also with that is that we were already behind on getting videos out, and I was encoding a video while that was going on. Lost that, and then I decided just for the heck of it, I'm going to go bare bones PC and see if this happens again. Boom. 30 seconds into Guts, crashed my PC, blue screened it. So here's an idea, Crunchyroll. Before you start working on premium content, fix your damn product.
Oh, elation. You are eliciting none.
Indeed. And unlike the panel here, no, I will not be watching High Guardian Spice because they have done literally nothing to convince me and bring me to the table.
Yeah, because they literally have shown nothing yet. As we've raised, we're just like, although
I have a bone to pick, specifically with Romney. That was not a trip to Skywalker Ranch. That was a trip to the gate.
Fair point. Yeah, not even the gate. That was a trip to
the security station.
Not even the security station. That was a trip to see a flyer for Skywalker Ranch on the other side of the country.
Pretty much. Like you were at the museum and you just so happened to see a Skywalker Ranch flyer. That's what that is.
No, better one is that you were walking out of a movie theater that happened to have a flyer for Skywalker Ranch on the ground somewhere.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, like through happenstance. Because I'm sorry, that trailer had nothing to be able to work with. The only thing that I walked away with it going, what is your definition of a Guardian? I'm pretty sure it's not my definition of a Guardian. That's all. And great. That's great in all you show conceptual art, but conceptual art can change. So you showed us nothing. You showed us a chick with a sword that eventually will come back and be a chick with a staff.
I mean, it's not a Kickstarter. Why are they showing it in conceptual stage? Good grief.
Yeah, and that's kind of the ultimate mistake there. They had nothing to show, and they blew their load too early, and now everything is sticky.
Pretty much.
So many interpretations of that.
so many interpretations. Thank you, Romney. You've officially Officially taking the Brinton Award tonight.
And we just started like the last half of we're out of stories, so we just started like the last half of the podcast into like just general BS time to catch up because we've even gone so long.
I mean,
occasionally though.
I mean, occasionally this has happened on the podcast, and we've done it, and it's fine.
I'm not complaining. I'm enjoying this. It's nice to just all of us chat a little bit and catch up a bit.
Yeah, I
mean, that's kind of why I wanted to do it this way. Is like I can actually sit here and BS with you guys because now I can actually talk about this.
Well, yeah, and of course, for the record, it's not the first time I've gotten the Brinton Award. There've been a few times I've gone there.
Alex has earned it once or twice. I've earned it. Although here's the difference here is like where Aldo you like way back when Aldo was able to do the podcast, he was the one creating the t-shirts. Brinton is now the one creating the t-shirts, except for Romney and the Diaper Hill thing. Damn it, Romney! There is such a demand for that now.
What can I say? People keep telling me I should go into marketing.
I've literally gotten literal descriptions that I need to send to Marta that actually work, which is basically me literally standing on a hill of diapers, dirty diapers, mind you, holding a flag that is a diaper. And now I just want to see what she does with it.
Yeah.
That's what happens. But unfortunately, we are running out of time, so we probably better start wrapping this up so that we don't get cut off. But yeah, if you guys want to see a little bit more of the BS sessions, let us know in the comments below, as well as in our email, and maybe we'll bring some of the stuff back, and we'll just have little talking points that we can get into. Maybe that'll be the way to get Alex off my back about how we don't talk enough anime. But I would actually argue the fact that Alex technically, and this is actually going to be another vlog that I'm going to be doing very soon, I'm not supposed to talk to you about anime because I'm not an anime fan.
Sure you are.
Technically, I'm not because I haven't watched anything modern.
I'm sure you've watched at least something. Maybe nothing that from this year.
I have. This person obviously missed that.
Yeah, that's the thing with some people.
That's one of the things that blows my mind is like, you don't do this. Anime card, give it. Geek card, give it. Why? Why? That's why this podcast exists.
Yeah.
For us to sit back and be geeks.
Yeah, I've had my sister try to pull that card on me, but luckily I can always counter with JoJo.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, for crying out loud, I've had like over the last couple of weeks because of baby, I've had like man card, take it back. You're supposed to be able to handle a lot more than this. Man card, take it. No, I refuse to give my man card. I have changed plenty of diapers.
Okay, is it just me, or are we starting to like veer into dialogue that will somehow appear in a Judd Apatow movie?
Something like that, yeah. I was actually going to go with Steve Odenkirk, but Judd Apatow works.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think they've both worked on stuff together in the past, I think
so. Yeah. All right. So if people want to be able to get a hold of us and all the awesome content that we actually do provide, Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, how do they do that with you?
Well, you can always find me under my handle, Studio Ghost Utah. That is my handle both on Facebook and on YouTube when I actually have the chance to upload stuff. I will be posting an update video explaining what's been going on with Monster Clash, so stay tuned for that. You can also find me on Instagram under Romney Does Art. Yes, I know I keep saying I need to do more because right now it's only bagels and cats and that one watercolor painting that wasn't really watercolor. And I am also on Twitter, which is probably the best way to get a hold of me if you want to send me suggestions or anything regarding the content I produce. Seriously, Adam's got 2 kids. He's got enough on his plate.
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and answer this right here and now before we get into the recommendation. I'm already referring people to you guys because there was actually one point where I'm like, I'll be nice. I'll start actually handling this stuff. No, I got 2 kids, guys. Yes. I got 2 kids. And here's the worst part about it too. They're very clingy towards their mothers. So sometimes I have to go in with a crowbar and just, take them in here for a little while.
Yes. And so to reiterate, Studio Ghost Utah on YouTube and Facebook, Romney Does Art on Instagram, and Romney Reviews on Twitter. And as for this week's Romney's recommendation, it's going to be nice, short, and sweet, and it may be very limited in scope, but if you live in Utah, particularly Salt Lake County, you probably received this. What I'm holding in front of the camera is the official mail-in ballot for the midterm elections. If you live in a state or a county where you have these ballots that have appeared, Alex was holding one too, don't just leave it sitting on your coffee table, don't just leave it sitting in your mailbox. Open the thing up, vote on the issues that are on the ballot, which here in Utah, we've got senators, representatives, we've got ballot initiatives. Point being is, people, vote. That is this week's Raw News recommendation: is do your civic duty and vote.
So for the record, I'd just like to point out the only thing I got out of that was, oh, good, they actually get their mail.
That's true. That is true. But yeah, so if you live in an area where they do voting by mail, fill that ballot out and get it in early, so that way you don't have to rush to get it in on election night. And if you're someone who is in an area where they don't vote by mail, well, make sure that you're registered. Make sure that you can vote on election day, because that is the only way to affect any real change given what's been going on in this administration this past year. So again, the Romney's recommendation.
So suspend Romney. He's talking politics. Not really.
Not really. This is just a PSA telling you to do your civic duty, citizen.
Yeah, pretty much. Like this is pretty much what any superhero would tell you to do. So I'm okay with it. If he actually went on into an agenda, then maybe I'd cut him off. But no, we're okay with it. Alex the Shadow Blazer, how do people get a hold of your content and the wonderful Princess Principal pictures behind you?
I still need to review that show, but I'll have a good time.
That's the greatest part about this whole thing.
Find me on YouTube. Shadow Blazer 3000 is my channel, and I do have anime content. And I actually got off my lazy duff and made some shit lately. So,
oh my gosh, he actually did.
Yes. So I made a review for Neptunia, the animation, which is based on the RPG series Hyperdimension Neptunia. I made my review of that anime. So I also did a quick shoot off of a few fall shows that I am currently watching right now. So I have 2 new videos. I got to sit down and start in the process of making my next one too. I just haven't had the time yet because the week's been very busy. So, and so is the weekend, but I'll get to it. So that's it. I got some new videos. So follow me, Shadowblazer 3000 on YouTube. I also do some occasional gaming content and on social media. You always want to know when a new video goes up. I'm on Twitter at AlexJShort.
Yes, he is there. Stop pestering me about the fact that I'm supposed to be cracking the whip to get him to do stuff.
Yeah, crack the whip on me. You can tell me to get to work.
Well, I was just gonna go down the lines of like, I'm not his mama, and he's a big boy. He could choose to do it on his own. And here's the other thing too. For some reason, I occasionally get people who think that I hold everybody to the same schedule standards as me. No. For one thing, both of these guys have 9 to 5 jobs that they actually have to go to. My 9 to 5 is usually at home as well as taking care of kids. So that's how I can swing that. And if you guys haven't noticed already, my schedule isn't that regular anymore. And it's probably not going to be for a while. But there you go. If you guys want to reach me, first of all, you're on my YouTube channel, so please go ahead and check out some of the content that I actually do provide. I just barely got out my recent review of the City of Final Fantasy NT, which has been a long time coming. So you guys can check out my thoughts on that. I'm sorry, you need to check out my biased Final Fantasy fan thoughts on that, because somebody wanted me to clarify that. Then you could also check out my reintroduction of Drak vlogs, where I actually answer a question that's been asked since way back in the Radio SLCC days of, do you actually consider yourself a journalist? I guess you'll have to watch the video and find out. And also you can follow me on social media and be able to ask these questions at my Twitter, which is at Drak2326. That's the best way to be able to reach out to me. Although if you do want video updates, you can check out Facebook and look under Drak LP, and you'll get all the updates via my Facebook page there. If you want to get a hold of the podcast to be able to either give feedback or be able to support us, the first thing that we recommend that you guys do is follow the RSS feed, which is at geekyweek.podomatic.com. You can also follow and look for the GNRO podcast, or the Geek News Reviews and Opinions podcast, on iTunes and Google Play for Android users. It is available there. And I'm actually also very happy to report, while in my absence, I burnt the candle at both ends, literally and figuratively. And all of the podcasts that were actually missing from that, they are now up. We are literally updated as of the last time the podcast was recorded. So you guys have plenty of episodes to be able to catch up on. Awesomeness in all of its awesomeness, glory, and all things awesome. I'm just finding ways to try and say awesome. You can also follow the podcast on social media under Twitter and Facebook if you look for Geeky NRO. and you'll be able to follow us there and get up to the minute information when we're going live, the stuff we're going to be talking about, if people are going to be missing, things like that. And we're also going to be trying to put in some fun stories just to be able to get you guys' opinions on as we go along, as well as maybe some ideas that might be coming very soon to the podcast, specifically to the RSS feed. Why? Because F YouTube. That's why. And also, if you want to be able to submit stories or submit feedback to the podcast, you can do so at our email, which is geekyweek@gmail.com. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us this evening. Thank you guys so much for your love, support, and patience with me specifically, as well as your love and support of the podcast while Stephen Romney and Alex were hosting in my absence. Again, thanks so much to these guys. I basically had to kind of crash course them into this, and I tried to give them as much preparation as I could, but thankfully they've been able to do it as much as they were able to. And also special thanks to Brenton Volley, who is not here tonight, for stepping in and kind of taking my seat while I went off and dealt with 3 a.m. wake-up calls and spitting up babies. So in that case, we will unfortunately not be back next week, as we actually have a big announcement tonight. We are going to be hosting a panel at Anime Bonsai in Layton, Utah next Saturday at 5 o'clock. So you guys can check us out there. You can come and join the panel and be able to mingle with us afterwards. And we'll have some fun there, at least for a little bit. So we will not be doing the podcast next week, but the following week after that, we will be back hopefully to a regular schedule. So that's going to go ahead and do it for us. For me, for Alex, and for Romney, we will be back next time for even more geek news, reviews, and opinions.